All right, Darksiders, welcome to the channel. A special welcome to those of you guys who are new here. If you are new here and you love The Mandalorian, then consider hitting that subscribe button and that notification bell and hanging out with myself and the rest of the Darksiders as we get into this show and a whole bunch of other content that we are super excited about that's on tap and coming up. So, The Mandalorian Chapter 4. My first question is to you. What did you think about this episode? How did you feel about it? Because some people were complaining that this episode was not as dynamic as some of the others. And I would agree with that. It's not as dynamic in terms of some of the fight sequences or even some of the intensity of story that we've had in episodes prior. But is this episode a filler? I wouldn't say that, as some people have said. I think this episode actually has some really important elements. And here's one thing. So let me know what you think about this. One thing that this episode proves is that The Mandalorian has really good writing and storytelling, because though this episode does not have a bunch of flashy or dynamic combat scenes, the strength of story here is still really good. It's still really immersive. So I love the fact that we get to meet Cara Dune's character. Now, this was one fight sequence in the episode that I thought was really good, and actually probably one of the best fight sequences I've seen in terms of The Mandalorian just in combat with he and a single combatant, because she really does get the best of him. So I love how they brought her in as just a beast. Now, some people have been a little bit nervous or have complained that they didn't see enough screen time with her. They thought she did such a good job. They'd like to see more of her. I definitely think we will, so I'm not worried about that at all. She was fabulous, and I liked her being brought into the story because now we expand the character base and we actually kind of expand the universe of The Mandalorian as well. I love what they did with the connection between The Mandalorian and Baby Yoda, and how they continue to build on that. Really gives The Mandalorian some emotional weight. And I continue, man, I continue to be impressed with how The Mandalorian is able to exhibit and show us emotion with no facial inflections. Think about that. You can't see him smile. Everything is done with his body language and his tone, and it's fantastic how they do that. There was also a lot of mention about his helmet in this episode and whether or not he'd ever taken it off and all that kind of good stuff. And now there's a whole bunch of theories going on about that, and I'm going to tell you what I think the reason is that they keep mentioning that is. But here's one theory. Let me know what you think about this. That there is something within the Mandalorian code as to whether or not helmets can or cannot be taken off. Honestly, I don't know, because I am not, like I said, a big fan of the kind of extra Star Wars material outside of the original 3 movies. So maybe there's stuff in there where there is some kind of code as to whether or not the Mandalorian can take his helmet off. I don't know. But the reason I think, honestly, that they keep talking about this is to build up for us, the audience, because sooner or later that helmet's coming off and we're going to see the Mandalorian under the helmet. And I think that they really want to kind of raise our anticipation of that happening. And that's why we get a lot of talk of the helmet coming off. But I think maybe it'll be written into the story why it's important that it doesn't. But I think that basically it's to build up to the helmet actually coming off, which I definitely think we will see in this season. I really thought that episode 4 was good. I really enjoyed it. I felt like there were some important things to note there for episodes that will follow. One last thing I do want to mention too is the leader of the village that they helped save in this episode. And I think that she's actually important as well. There's no way she's able to shoot like that and her not have some importance or her not have some backstory that is beyond that planet. And I actually think that planet in and of itself will end up being pretty important in the story as well, as the Mandalorian mentions some of the things going on that planet that seem strange for a planet that is situated as it is, with no kind of ports coming in and out, but basically a planet that's just kind of standalone, living its own life. There's some things going on there that he says shouldn't be happening there. So I think that planet actually will be more important as we move on to other episodes as well. All in all, I thought this was fantastic. I always look forward to The Mandalorian. Every Friday, I look forward to it coming out. So let me know what you thought about The Mandalorian. Here is more Mandalorian content right here. You guys can check that out. I will meet you over there, and I will see you on that video. Peace.